Yeah, Friday edition of Mr. Irrelevant, presented by County Distillery, locally produced, handcrafted, award-winning spirits. I'm Alex Strouf with you from the Group of Law Offices. One Call, That's All Studios at the Avenue in downtown Milwaukee. Producer Tiny Hands, Hunter Vaughn back at the Everlight Solar Studio in downtown Madison. Good to be with you on a Friday. Jim Rutledge is going to join us. We're going to have another respectful Bears conversation following the NFL draft. And all the chitter-chatter we've had on the program this week, it just felt it felt like a good spot for Jim Rutledge to come join me. So he'll join me in about 15 minutes to talk little Bears, little Packers, little NFC North overall. I know we did it a few months ago, back when we were out at the Tipsy Cow in Sun Prairie for the best burger bracket with our friends from Lake Louie, and he joined us prior to the NFL draft. But I want to now have the post-draft Romo Odunze and Keenan Allen conversation around the Bears with Jim Rutledge. So we'll do that in about 15. Hunter, before we get there, though, I've got a couple of things I want to run by you. Then we'll talk Packers. Then we'll take a break. Then we'll talk to Jim Rutledge. Does that work for you?
Yeah, that works. What's up?
So let's start with Luka Doncic's press conference. I just want to confirm you were not in Oklahoma City yesterday. What was that about? I don't really want to spell it out, but essentially a reporter, I assume, or somebody had quite the soundbite play out of their computer, if you know if you're picking up what I'm putting down. What'd you make of that?
I don't appreciate that you're just assuming that I was in Oklahoma City. That's not appropriate.
I'm just confirming you weren't.
I don't, but you're also insinuating that I would do other things. I don't appreciate that. That's all I'm saying.
That's not what I was trying. Not what I was trying to do.
No, that's wild. I don't know what somebody was doing before they're going to go to work that would need to be on any of their devices that could have connected or been playing that. I did have a nearly similar thing happen, though, once.
Okay.
While I was going to school at UW Fox Valley, I'm in their library, just, working on some final stuff, not really thinking about much, and a buddy of mine decided to just send me a link on Facebook Messenger.
Oh, no.
And I didn't even think about it. I just was like, oh, what's this? And I clicked on it, and all of a sudden it popped up on my screen and it was blaring. Luckily I had headphones in, but I almost fell over off of my chair, and I'm pretty sure a bunch of people saw this and saw what was on my screen and thought that I'm a sicko for watching this in public. So it was a whole thing and it was not enjoyable. So I do feel bad for whoever that was, because that's tough.
Yeah, it's a tough break. That's a tough break. All right, so I just saw that this morning. I thought it was fascinating and really uncomfortable. I thought Luka handled it like a champ. Luka and the Mavs, by the way, tying up that series with Oklahoma City at 1 game apiece. Good series, man, here in the conference semifinals. Couple of good series. Another great game tonight, obviously. Minnesota-Denver. That series heads back to our state to the west, Minnesota, as the Timberwolves have a 2-0 lead on the Nuggets. Really looking forward to watching Game 3 of that one tonight. So we will just all amped up, man. We talked about it a little bit earlier this week, but these NBA playoffs are a lot of fun. I mean, there's some really fun series, some fun up-and-coming teams. So I'm very excited to watch Game 3 of that one. So that's probably all the NBA playoffs talk we'll do. Shout out to Luka Doncic, though. Hunter, I saw yesterday. Now, I need to set this up correctly. I love dogs. I'm a dog guy more than a cat guy. I think bark at the park is a really fun idea. I saw the Brewers yesterday had bark at the park at AmFam Field. And I mean, I just want to address the elephant in the room, right? I think we've all had the same thought when it comes to bark at the park. Where do the dogs go to the bathroom, Hunter?
I don't know. I've wondered that too.
So I went on the Bark at the Park FAQ page on Brewers.com, and there was nothing that addresses the bathroom. And I didn't go to the game last night. I haven't talked to anybody that went to the game last night. I would assume if I was a gambling man or a betting man, which I am sometimes, that if you're going to go to the restroom with a pup at Bark at the Park night, there's probably a matted area in the concourse, would be my guess. But there's no information on the Brewers FAQ site about that. So I'm fascinated. I love dogs. I think dogs at the ballpark, fun idea. But where do they go potty, man? I'm dying to know the answer to that.
Now, what about the areas by, they have those, outdoor kind of smoking sections that they would gate off? And that maybe you put something out there?
Yeah, would you put down, potty pads, I think is what those things are called? I don't know.
Yeah,
So,
maybe a little bit of
that's really
AstroTurf, make them think that they're out on the lawn. Like,
see, there's an idea. Now, but do you bring doo-doo bags? I assume not everybody does.
But
I
you
assume
have
not
to.
everybody does.
I know,
I'm
and those
with you.
people are gross people.
Correct. I would assume responsible dog owners would bring doggy poo-poo bags. I never thought I would say that sentence on a show. I would assume, but I don't know. So anyway, it's just something that is really infested my mind the last several hours. When I found out last night was bark at the park night. So anyway, yeah. So that's the thoughts that run through my brain. All right, let's talk Packers now. So the big story that's gotten a lot of traction this week. Hat tip to our friend Jason Wilde, friend of the show. He pointed out that he doesn't often see roommates in the offseason that are teammates, right? And earlier this offseason, Jayden Reed and Dontayvion Wicks got is it Verbo or VRBO? Verbo, I think. It's essentially an Airbnb. They got one together to train in the offseason, which I think is awesome, right? And, it's something we've talked about here already in the offseason is how does this Packers wide receiver room shake out? You're happy with the results you saw last year. You're happy with everything that, those young guys were able to develop into and were able to give you in a season that was filled with question marks and uncertainty and low expectations. Hunter, nicely done on the graphic on the video stream, and they were roommates. One of the all-time.
And they were roommates.
Nice, very nice job. Proud of you. So I am fascinated by these two bunking up together. Essentially, I would imagine a very nice VRBO with NFL money to essentially get better together. And I mean, those are the two rookies from last year, Dontayvion Wicks and Jayden Reed. I mean, those would be my two picks for the guys that could be dogs for this Packers offense, right? No pun intended after talking about bark at the park. I think these two can develop into your top two weapons offensively, along with Josh Jacobs at running back. I think Jayden Reed gives you things that nobody else in this team can give you. And we saw some of those flashes last year, right? Whether it be those end arounds that it seemed that Matt LaFleur was absolutely obsessed with, whether it be, some of the lining up in the backfield things he did last year. I really like Jayden Reed. I really like the potential out of him. He was my draft crush last year, and he had a terrific rookie season with the Green Bay Packers. Dontayvion Wicks, when he was healthy, was amazing for this Packers team. It seems like he can probably develop into, debatably, the best receiver on this team. Great route runner, has a good downfield threat. I really like some of the things that Dontayvion Wicks shows for the Packers. Now, I try not to, and I hate to be a pessimist on a Friday, because I try not to get too caught up in the flashes, right? Like, I want results. The thing with the Packers is now, especially the Packers offense, is they have expectations now, right? Last year was just kind of, well, let's see what they got. See what they can do for me, right? You're sitting back having a cherry brandy old fashioned from County Distillery last year, thinking maybe Jordan Love's the guy, and maybe these receivers can pop off, and maybe these tight ends can develop into something. The investment's there, but they're all so young, right? Mistakes are going to happen. So it was always a question last year of what exactly can this Packers offense be, and then at the end of the year, when they're beating the Chiefs and losing to the Giants and, ultimately beating Hunter's Cowboys in the playoffs in the wild card round. And actually really that end of your stretch, right? Vikings week 17, Bears week 18 into the wild card game against the Cowboys. That offense looked amazing. And that's credit to Jordan Love and the way he was able to elevate some of those young guys. That's credit to Matt LaFleur and some of the, schematic part of that and the play calling. I thought he did a really nice job towards the end of the year, putting together an offense and a game plan that allowed these young guys to completely excel. So when it comes to those two guys, I love that they're getting in off-season work together. I love that they're, this was back in February when the story really came out, but it was confirmed this week by talking to some of the assistant coaches at Lambeau Field. I think these two are your top two. Now, Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson are obviously very flashy and sexy pieces, to use that word choice. Christian Watson, if he can stay healthy, might be your best receiver. He's certainly your best downfield threat when it comes to speed and some of the things he can do to take the top off the defense. And then Romeo Doubs is just Mr. Reliable, right? Like he continues to draw comparisons to James Jones. Strong hands, maybe not the flashiest piece in the world, but he's reliable. And when you throw it up to him, there's a darn good chance he comes down with it. So everything about those four excite me. But it once again begs the question, which now this will be the third offseason in a row for the Green Bay Packers. We're asking this question. Who is the number one receiver? And we've talked to Jason about it before, and Rob Domofsky we talked to about it last week. Maybe their superpower is they don't have a number one receiver, right? Like some games it's Bo Melton, and some games it's Christian Watson, and then one game it's Jayden Reed, and then the next game it's Dontayvion Wicks. I think that's a good problem to have, but I don't know if that's Super Bowl recipe, right? Like when you look at teams that win Super Bowls, they traditionally have a true number one receiver or tight end in the case of some of the Patriots teams and obviously the Chiefs teams for the last 2 years. Travis Kelce was their best receiver. Prior to that, when the Rams won, Cooper Kupp had an MVP-like season. I worry that unless somebody comes out of this competition, if you view it that way, and really prevails as the true Jordan Love, when you think of Packers quarterbacks, they've always been attached to the hip with a number one receiver, right? For Favre, it was Sharp. For Rodgers, it was Jordy. And obviously Devontae towards the end of his tenure in Green Bay. And Rodgers, and Favre had more than one, right? I mean, Sharp was the main one in the Super Bowl era, but then along came a guy like Donald Driver who had a couple really nice seasons with Favre. And then at the end of Favre, it was Greg Jennings. And then obviously, like I mentioned, for Rodgers, it was Jennings, and then it was Jordy, and then it was Devontae Adams. Jordan Love doesn't have that guy yet. And I don't necessarily, again, I don't view that as a completely bad thing because there's plenty of talent around him. I think those tight ends, I'm really intrigued to see what the sophomore season brings for them. If one of them can elevate into a top 10 tight end in the league, it wouldn't shock me, either of them. I think Kraft showed some really nice things. I thought when Musgrave was healthy, he showed some really nice things. But when he went down, Kraft took the role and ran with it, and I thought he was terrific. He just has to stop trying to hurdle people. I love what this Packers offense is. So don't read this in a way of, hey, man, I don't believe in the Packers offense. That's not at all what I'm saying. It's more to be a Super Bowl team, which I think the Packers are getting closer to being. I feel like you need a true number one. And maybe somebody does rise above the rest of the pack. And Jayden Reed or Dontayvion Wicks or Christian Watson has a healthy season. And you say, okay, that's their number one guy. That's my hope for 2024. I'm just a little interested to see what happens here. They've got the pieces. It's just a matter if they're able to evolve into something else. All right. We've talked a lot of Bears this week, more than I'd like to. But if we're going to talk Bears, we got to talk to Jim Rutledge. Uh-oh, Hunter, what's wrong?
Why? Nothing's wrong.
I just hear your mic. I said I was talking more Bears than I'd like to. I heard you crack your mic. Do you have something to say on that?
No, Jim was just getting ready, and he turned his mic on. So he's ready to go.
Oh, okay. He's ready to go. I got you. Well, let's do this. Let's take a break. We'll hear from our friends from Door County Distillery, locally produced, handcrafted, award-winning spirits made in beautiful Door County up in Carlsville. We stopped by there a couple weeks ago. It was a fantastic trip. Got to do all the tastings, got to do all the samplings, got to see everything they're up to. They always do. Awesome. One thing I love about Door County Distillery, seriously, is all the local collaborations they do with Door County Coffee and Door County Candle Company. Obviously not in the alcohol side with the Candle Company, but they do all these local collaborations with different breweries up there. And it's so cool that they truly are like a local Wisconsin company, and everything they do is local Wisconsin. So let's take a break. We'll hear from Door County Distillery when we come back. Jim Rutledge joins me to talk a little Bears, a little Packers, a little NFC North. We'll put a bow on the Bears for a while because we've talked about them way too much this week. We'll do that next. It's Mr. Relevant. I'm Alex Strouf. I'm back at the legendary Door County Distillery with the legendary Beth.
Hi.
Nothing bigger right now than espresso martinis and confession. I've never had one, Beth, so I think I need you to teach me how to make one.
It's real simple. With ours, we do our Java infusion, which is our coffee-infused spirit, our vodka, some chocolate sauce, and some coconut cream, so it's dairy-free for those who can't have lactose. We're going to start with 2.5 ounces of our Java, because this is a martini, so lots of booze.
Yes.
1.5 of our vodka, about a 1/2 ounce of your chocolate syrup and your coconut cream, or cream if you prefer. Shake this for about 15 seconds.
She's a pro. I'd spill everywhere.
Strain that into our martini glass. There we go. Quick and easy espresso martini.
Time to try it. First ever espresso martinis. Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, that's delicious. That's really good. I'm an espresso martini girly now. Yeah, no doubt.
Who isn't?
Check out their website with a huge list of unique cocktail recipes at DoorCountyDistillery.com. That's DoorCountyDistillery.com.
Yeah, DoorCountyDistillery.com is where you can find the huge list of unique cocktail recipes. All right, joining me now is Jim Rutledge, host of Rutledge and Hamilton, weekdays 4 to 6 on ESPN Madison. He is our resident Bears fan. And you know, Jim, I saw you earlier this week when you were here in Milwaukee, yesterday, I guess that was. And we talked a lot about the Bears, right? Because they are a fascinating team right now. And per usual, I'm going to be respectful. I'm not going to hit you with, you guys haven't done anything yet.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about where the Bears are at this offseason because imaginably so. You're riding very high after the drafting of Caleb Williams, who, by the way, I saw today was officially named the starting quarterback, like he needed to be named that. But you also had Keenan Allen, you had Rome Odunze, you had Gerald Everett too, you had DeAndre Swift, right? This offense is in a position to succeed for a rookie quarterback. How are you feeling about the Chicago Bears as it stands on May 10th?
Well, I would say, one, I think this year, you'll have to, in a good way, take away the respectfully, where you talk about, oh, Chicago's struggling. They won 7 games last year, and the expectations should be raised. I think a lot of Packer fans are either being willfully ignorant or just not aware that the Bears didn't earn the number 1 pick this year. They earned it in a way of pulling off one of the best trades already in the last 10 years. It could end up being one of the best trades in NFL history, depending on what happens to Caleb Williams. And they positioned themselves. They won 7 games last year with a fired offensive coordinator, with a quarterback who is being talked about possibly being a kick returner for the Steelers, and an offense that didn't feature Rome Odunze or Keenan Allen or Swift or the 3 new offensive linemen they brought in to compete or add depth. So, and they have an offensive coordinator in Shane Waldron, who it's definitely not Matt LaFleur, but he's a capable offensive coordinator who's developed Jared Goff and Geno Smith. And has some pelts on the wall, has some warts too, but at least the guy that knows how to call plays. And in the defense last year, I don't think they'll finish like this, but after they added Montez Sweat, they were a top 5 defense in DVOA. Over the course of the year, they're around 12, and I think that's where they'll wrap up as a top 10 defense. But their offense was one of the worst in the NFL last year, and if their offense gets to be respectable, which I think they will be, I think the team will be respectable.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And I think the NFC North, and we've talked about this both on and off the air a lot, I think it's shaping up to be one of the more competitive divisions in all of the league, and especially in the NFC, which isn't super good, right? I think the NFC North has 3 of the best teams of probably the top 7 or 8 in the NFC. So I'm really intrigued to see, I think the Lions, without a doubt, are still the favorite. I think the Packers, of course, after what they were able to do last year, are right there. Now, the Bears are really fascinating, right? Like Caleb Williams, it feels different. And I've said this before. It feels different than a Justin Fields or a Mitch Trubisky. And while those guys had flashes and moments that you rightfully so got excited about, I just feel like Caleb Williams is a little bit different than those guys in terms of a prospect and a true franchise quarterback type in the NFL. I think you would agree with that, too.
He's one of the few that can come in and be named the starter right away, and it doesn't seem ridiculous. And I would look at the way the Bears, look at the Packers here. And the best thing they've done with Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love is not sit them. It was recognizing that they needed to sit. And not every quarterback has to sit. And I maintain Patrick Mahomes didn't have to sit. He just happened to have Alex Smith in front of him. The team was good the year before. You don't need to sit and then the next year come in and throw 50 touchdowns. He would have been fine as a rookie. But with Jordan Love, he needed to sit to maximize his ability. Same with Aaron Rodgers. Mitch Trubisky and Justin Fields, they would not have been to the level of even Jordan Love or Aaron Rodgers, but they would have been better quarterbacks if they had sat. Caleb Williams is a guy that this is why he has the high draft grade, because the difference between a lot of these quarterbacks that we're all talking about is that they're very rarely viewed as the number 1 overall prospect in the draft, along with being the number 1 quarterback. Usually it's they're maybe the 5th, 6th best prospect, but their quarterback still will be number 1. Caleb's viewed as a guy that can come in and start right away. He's saying all the right things publicly that you want. They asked him about leadership today. He said, to be a leader, I have to be a follower. I'm going to follow these vets, and then I'll learn how to lead. And so he is saying and doing everything you want a QB to do. And the last two quarterbacks you talked about, Mitch Trubisky and Justin Fields, the Bears learned from it. One, they've loaded up the offense around them, but all around Caleb this time. But two, they're also naming him the starter immediately. So he's working on install from the second he got there. Justin Fields and Mitch Trubisky were taking third-string snaps at one point during their rookie season. Then second string, they tried to go work your way up. Well, they weren't getting the reps at an NFL level they needed. So when they were thrown to the Wolves because of injury in week 7, 8, or I think 4 for Justin Fields' case, they weren't ready.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Justin Fields, if I'm not mistaken, Jim, didn't he watch... Wasn't it Andy Dalton who was technically taking first-team reps at that point?
Yeah, Andy Dalton started the season.
Andy Dalton was a Bear.
Yeah, he started the season. Justin Fields scored a touchdown in their first game. They used him as a running back. Maybe a little forecasting there.
Wildcat.
Yeah, but then I think it was week 3 or 4, Andy Dalton broke his hand, and the Bears threw Justin Fields out against Cleveland, 7 sacks because they didn't have an offense created to work around Justin Fields. They didn't do anything. They just said, hey, run the Andy Dalton offense, and Justin got destroyed, and that was the beginning of his NFL career, 7 sacks.
Yeah. Well, first off, I need to ask, because the question every Bears fan needs to answer right now, Jimmy, is how will you remember the Tyson Bagent era?
You know what? Tyson Bagent will probably still have a few moments in his NFL career with the Bears. I think I think the Bears found a nice backup quarterback. And I never bought into the Tyson Bagent era. And for the record, I had optimism, but I was not bought in on Mitch and Justin. It was more of, hey, let's just see, can they progress? And neither one of them progressed past like the first step of being a good. Like Mitch had a nice first full season as a starter. He never got better, and in fact got worse as he got scouted out. Justin Fields, as a first-season starter, had a game and a season that put him in the NFL Hall of Fame for some of the stuff that he did, and was leading an offense that was top in the NFL for 6, 7 games. They were scoring 30 points a game.
You mean like his apparel was in the NFL Hall of Fame? He did not get fitted for a gold jacket.
No,
right?
but his shoes are there, and his and he's in the record book. But I'm saying that put him, his body, his shoes in the Hall of Fame. And 30 points a game, I think, for about 6 games in the middle of the season that year. And the step never was taken forward. And that's what Bears fans can get excited about, and other fan bases get excited about, just like the Packer fans are excited about Jordan Love. The difference is Jordan Love Jordan Love could be Jordan Love, what he was last year, for the rest of his career, and you got a very good quarterback. The problem was Mitch and Justin had further to go to get to be good. Caleb, I think, will come in and have a season that will look something similar, I don't know directly statistically, but to the optimism level of what C.J. Stroud and Jordan Love did and Justin Herbert did as first-year starters recently. There's other guys who have done it.
Right. The optimism is fair, right? I mean, C.J. Stroud lit up the league, but he was still, I think, 13th or 14th in passing touchdowns, right? I mean, he had a really good rookie year. Now he's just looking to stack success. Same with Jordan Love. And I led the show today, Jim, minus my question about at Bark at the Park, where did dogs pee? Do you know the answer to that? Can you shed any light on that? Bark at the Park last night?
It's what, cement? I would imagine they just pee on the cement, and they just rinse it all off.
Yeah, that's disgusting. I really hope that's not the case.
I will never take my dog to Bark at the Park anywhere. Nope.
What if it's like Wisconsin Timberrattlers, the Sigalei affiliate up at Appleton? Their entire right field is grass seating. So, like, at least there's areas for dogs to go there.
Yeah.
At AmFam Field, it's all concrete.
Yeah.
I literally don't understand it. And on the Brewers' FAQ about Bark at the Park on their website, there's no information about the potty. It's really bothering
First rule
me.
of
anyway.
Bark at the Park is don't talk about potty. That's basically it. Because I'm guessing their trashes are full of crap, literally, as well. So, I mean, there's the pee part of it, but you got a bunch of people walking around carrying around bags of crap. So, does not sound like a good time to me.
It's a good point. I love dogs, but man, that's just really been bothering me. Anyway, so I led the show off when I wasn't talking about that. Talking about the Packers wide receiver. And I don't have concerns, right? Like, there's clearly some pieces there and there's been flashes, but I want results now, right? In a year that has expectations for the Packers, I would love to see somebody take that step to be the true number one. And while it's nice that you've got a bunch of nice pieces and you can scheme different guys open and you can scheme different guys to be the guy, right? There was a Bo Melton game last year. it feels like Super Bowl teams always have a number one true receiver, right? With the Patriots for years, it was Gronkowski. With the Chiefs now in back-to-back Super Bowl wins, it's been Kelsey. For the Rams a couple of years ago, when they won the Super Bowl, Cooper Kupp had MVP-like numbers that season. The Packers don't really have a true number one. Is that concerning, or am I maybe overthinking that one?
I think it's a high variance for the Packers. To expect for them to repeat what they did last year with this group of wide receivers is probably a bit of a bridge too far. Goody is trying to basically go against how the rest of the NFL works, because they might be rolling out the youngest team in the NFL again, which historically is not the way that you win Super Bowls. And then they might also be rolling out the youngest wide receiver crew again without a true number one. Christian Watson, if healthy, which is a giant asterisk, could be a number one. Jayden Reed screams more of Deebo Samuel, Tyreek Hill type weapon guy than a true one. Or I don't think he's going to develop into I use DJ Moore as an example because he's a smaller receiver. I don't think Reed gets to that. But you look at his pedigree. If Jayden Reed was 3 inches taller, he's probably a top 10 pick. So I do think that there's a ton of talent with him, and I think he's their best offensive weapon. And I understand the idea of spreading the ball around, but the San Francisco game, and there's games throughout the year when Jordan Love struggled, sometimes those guys don't get open. What happens when they're not schemed open? What happens when they're not running free into the secondary because the defense screwed up? What happens when defenses have an entire offseason, not to slow down Jordan Love, but just to understand a little bit more of what the Packers are doing with Jordan Love? So at the very minimum, there's not guys running free. There are, at least, if a guy is open, they're NFL open and not just running, like a deer into the woods. So and that's not going to hurt Jordan. What will hurt Jordan Love is that, what happens when he has to make every throw perfect instead of having a few tougher throws or a few easy throws to make every game to build up that confidence? And Jordan Love is going to be, I think we saw his floor last year. I think at a bare minimum, he'll get marginally better. I think he could be, I don't see him as Mahomes level or Rodgers, but I do think he could be somewhere in that Dak Prescott, Jared, and I think Dak Prescott is good. I mean, he led the number one offense in the NFL last year. Jared Goff, a lot of these, Jimmy Garoppolo, all these guys got the quarter. He's different, but they all got their teams to Super Bowls. You can win with them, and at times win because of them. He'll make plays. Because I think it is there's 3 or 4 quarterbacks at the top of the NFL, and then there's maybe 7, 8 guys who are right below that, and then there's the rest of the league. And I think Jordan lives in that 7 to 8 guys who are just below the top of the NFL.
I'm willing to go through it because I read a list from Bleacher Report this morning of the top 12 quarterbacks after the draft, and Jordan Love was not on that list, right? So you mentioned the 3 or 4 at the top. I would assume we'll agree on these in no particular order.
Yep.
Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. Those would probably be the 4 I'd throw out there.
Yep.
I don't think I'm missing anybody. And then you kind of go to that next tier where I'd probably throw out names like a Justin Herbert.
Yep.
I'm hesitant to say Trevor Lawrence, but a Matt Stafford when he's healthy. Is Brock Purdy in that conversation yet, Jim? Or am I jumping the gun on him?
I think as currently set up, yes, because Brock's contract, maybe he's a guy that needs all these players around him. But because his contract is so low for another season, I don't doubt he's going to play at a high level. And it could be 100% because of the players around him. Or it could be over time he ends up just becoming a better quarterback. He's not going to be Tom Brady, but Tom Brady was viewed as a system QB until he wasn't. And so Brock Purdy might have been a guy who he might fall back a little bit when the weapons start to fall off. But right now with the weapons around him, if you're picking quarterbacks to tier, not on talent, but just on what they're going to do next year, Brock Purdy is up there.
Yep. I tend to agree, and obviously it helps when you have an offense like that around him, right? And honestly, Jim, I hate to give the Bears credit, but that's kind of a situation Caleb Williams is walking into. Probably not quite to the level of San Francisco, but when it comes to weaponry around him, he's stacked. So anyway, let's continue with the list. So Dak Prescott is a name I think you and I would agree on.
Yep.
How do we feel about Jared Goff?
Again, you know what you're getting out of Jared Goff. You know that if you give him, honestly, he's kind of like Brock Purdy all polished up. That if you give Jared Goff a clean pocket and the ability to find the open, give him time to find the open receiver, he will do it. And he's perfect for this offense. And they have weapons around him. They have Laporta. They have St. Brown. Now they need Williams to step up in Detroit, but he has weapons. He knows the system. He plays well in it. So I would put him in front of Jordan Love this season just because he's gotten his team to the NFC Championship game and a Super Bowl and has proven it year in and year out that he can repeat the performances he does.
Yeah, he's not. You and I always like to do this as an offseason, and we're going to get there in a minute.
Yeah.
But we always do this. This will be probably the 4th year in a row, Jim. We've done this offseason exercise where we figure out what the line is.
Yeah.
Right? Like, who is the middle of the pack? Like, who is the line of, okay, that's where you need to improve from. So we'll get there in a second.
Yep.
The next 3 names I'd throw out are these. I would throw out C.J. Stroud, Tua Tagovailoa, Jordan Love. Those would be my next 3.
And I would put Love in front of Tua. And Kirk Cousins is in there somewhere. I know he got hurt, but
Rodgers too.
Yeah,
right?
that's right,
Kirk
yes.
and Rodgers
Yeah.
are part of that weird
Yes.
you just got to see what they are, right? Like weird injuries for both. They were both Achilles, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And they're getting older, right?
Yep.
Rodgers obviously older than Kirk. I think Kirk is 36. Rodgers is 40, or 39 or 40. So you just got to see. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Those are just kind of weird asterisk ones that are in that group. I would agree with.
So
okay, now we start getting into some of the. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, go ahead, because I wanted to, off of this, because I think the better conversation for Love is The Athletic did something about quarterbacks you take over the next 3 years. And I can tell you where he fell into that. But finish up what you're doing, then I'll throw it back to you.
Okay. I would just Trevor Lawrence is a name I start throwing out then. Deshaun Watson is a name I would throw out.
I would put Lawrence in front of Love, but not Watson.
I tend to agree. I don't know. Lawrence, I need to see what he is this year.
He kind of had the
Last year
same,
was
his
little
second
up and down.
His second full season at the start of the team went 9-8, won a playoff game, and his stats are pretty dang close to Jordan Love's. So Jordan Love could turn into Trevor Lawrence all of a sudden. Jordan Love still threw for over 4,000 yards last year. He just had too many turnovers.
Yeah. Jalen Hurts is a name we forgot.
Hurts I'd put in front of him.
Somewhere in there.
I'd put him in front of Love. Again,
Okay.
he was going to win the MVP if he didn't get hurt. The year
Now,
they
the
went
window, and we should just spell it out. The window between these guys we're talking about now and Love is so slim, right? Like the window between a Burrow or a Mahomes or an Allen and a Lamar to Love is quite big.
Yes.
But the rest of these names, they're very narrow.
Right. Again, that goes to the variance that at the end of this, Jordan Love could be at the very top of this group of, I don't even call it second tier. It's all like, if you want to have the platinum players and he's a gold level player, like he's in that gold category. And I don't see him slipping down to silver, but I think he's going to move somewhere within the gold category throughout.
I like this analogy. That's well done by you. Okay, so then now I think we're kind of to the, where are these guys category. Baker Mayfield, another name we missed. But the next category is where you bring up the names of like Derek Carr, Kyler Murray. Yeah,
I'd put
those
Murray
might be the line
closer
these days.
I would put Murray closer to the. I'm going to chalk up the injuries for him, and so I'd still put him closer, like with Baker, somewhere in that between that gold and silver area. Derek Carr might be the mid quarterback line.
He was last year. I think Tannehill was the year prior. I think last year we landed on Derek Carr. I think for the second year in a row we're landing on Derek Carr because I'm not ready to throw out. I mean, there's so many rookies this year too, which you have to keep in mind, right? Like, is J.J. McCarthy the starter in Minnesota? It wouldn't shock me. Michael Penix
screams
obviously
Mitch
will be a
Trubisky to
backup
me,
for the time being.
By the way,
I agree.
A lot of
Fully
scouting
agree.
reports about not being able to go left, deep left, because he doesn't have the arm strength or the proper footwork. But again, the Vikings could maximize Trubisky, McCarthy, the Trubisky 2.0, by letting him sit and have him work on the footwork, have him get a little stronger so he can make all the NFL throws in a year or two.
Okay, let's go back to your Athletic article because I'm actually fascinated by that. Who you would choose over the next 3 years? I imagine C.J. Stroud is really high on that list.
So I'll try to remember I know the bottom of the list. I'll try to remember if they kind of came to the same thing. So number one was still Mahomes into this thing over the next 3 years, and then it was Stroud was high on there, and then I'm trying to think who else would have been. Oh, Josh Allen was 2. It was Patrick Mahomes and then Josh Allen. That I remember for sure, and then
Herbert.
Herbert was 4, Stroud was 3, and again, I'm trying to go off the top of my head here. And then this is where it gets kind of convoluted. I know that there was Trevor Lawrence in this group. Joe Burrow was, I think, 7. I think Lawrence was 6.
Lower than I thought.
And I'm trying to remember who 5 was. But 5 is escaping me, but it was Lawrence and Burrow. Burrow because...
Maybe Lamar?
Yeah, Lamar. There you go. Yep, that's exactly what it was. Yeah. And then Dak's in there somewhere, too. Sorry, Dak is in this mix as well. Because they just said that, like, I understand Dak didn't have a great playoff game, but like still a heck of a quarterback and still pretty young. 9 and 10 were Jordan Love was 9, and Caleb Williams is 10.
Williams?
Yep.
Interesting.
Again, contract for Caleb. And situations going into.
Yeah.
Because Love's going to get.
that helps.
Because the other question we asked on our show, I'll ask you this. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that for average annual value, Jordan Love could be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL when this deal is set at $55.5 million. Because Joe Burrow's 55. If his number, according to Schefter on Jen, Gabe, and Chewy, starts with a 5, I guarantee that's where his agent's starting. It might only be like a 4-year deal at 55.5, and Lawrence might end up getting a longer deal at a lower AAV. But I could see Love getting that number.
I could too. You're so much better on the cap and some of the financial stuff in the NFL than I am. I imagine it's probably in the mid-50s. I would guess somewhere between 52 and 56 a year.
So 52.5, I think, would be. So Herbert and Lamar, I think, are at like 52 right there. And there's another quarterback in that mix. So the thing I would say that Jordan Love's agent is probably saying, like, hey, we played a good soldier. We sat behind Aaron Rodgers. You stunted our ability to make money. We were all good on that. We want to be able – we took this team-friendly deal on the restructure. So we've done all these things for you. We want to make him the average annual value leader in the NFL in quarterback pay.
Yeah, and look, the thing with Love is, as a young guy who's only going into his second year as a starter, is you are paying more on potential than you are on performance, which isn't always the case, right? Like for Mahomes, you got paid for both, but for like a Rodgers or a Kirk Cousins, right, you're getting paid on past performance more so than you are potential. Where Love, you're getting paid on potential. So, yeah, it'll be really interesting to see when that finally comes to a head. I think it'll be a month or two. So probably closer to training camp would be my guess.
A fun exercise you can do, or your listeners can do, we did it on the show, but go look at the stats of all the quarterbacks who signed the big deals after their first rookie deal and look at the numbers of the stuff they'd proven, wins and losses and otherwise, and then look at the contracts they got is one interesting part to it. The other part of it is he'll take up, and they'll have to maneuver the number around, but just on paper, he'll take up over 20% of the team's salary cap, which is non-tenable for winning the Super Bowl. Even Patrick Mahomes was 17% last year. Because that's the other part of this. Patrick Mahomes, unless you're Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady, you do not win a Super Bowl taking up more than 10% of your team's salary cap. And you usually don't go.
Yeah, and no, you're right. It's pretty. You might go, but you definitely don't win.
I think it's 8. I think it's 8 out of the last 9, or maybe not. 8 out of the last 10, or 9 out of the last 11 features at least one quarterback on a rookie deal in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and it seems like they lose because Brady and Mahomes have won so many of those,
that's
right?
basically what happens. I think Stafford would be the guy who didn't.
Yeah, you're right. Stafford would be the guy. Otherwise, it's Mahomes, Brady, or is there anybody else? I mean,
over the last few years, no. What's that?
Hurts went, but didn't win.
Purdy.
Nick Foles.
Yep.
Won one, but his deal wouldn't have been very big. He was
and that was Carson Wentz was the starter, but he was on a rookie deal.
Okay.
Okay. So you go all the way back to Aaron Rodgers, 2010, but that was an uncapped season.
Yeah.
So it was not. Right. It did not matter what percentage. And then you look at, look at the other QBs. Jalen Hurts, we talked about Brock Purdy, but then Russell, he was not getting paid.
Russell, yeah.
So I mean,
wow,
yeah,
that's interesting.
I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm not saying it can't happen, but not. It's just it gets harder.
For sure. And the Packers are in. Their window isn't super large, right? With all these guys on rookie deals that are both offensively and defensively that are going to be big impact guys. So we will see. Before I let you go, Jim, make your pick. If you had to pick right now, who's the Packers' number one receiver?
So you're taking overall stats. Like, how do you define number one?
Just like. If I made you write out a depth chart of wide receivers you absolutely don't want to lose, who would be the first name you wrote down?
That one's different than I would go Jayden Reed, but I would say if the Packers need a first down, it'll be Romeo Doubs. Like in a traditional passing situation, Jordan Love's guy, his de facto Devontae of like, I know this guy is going to do everything to make sure at a bare minimum a bad thing doesn't happen and hopefully a good thing happens. It's Doubs, but Reed is probably the guy that they still want to scheme things up for the majority of the time as far as percentage of usage in the offense.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Jim Rutledge, host of Rutledge and Hamilton's weekdays 4 to 6 on ESPN Madison, on Twitter at Jim Rutledge. Jimmy, appreciate the time, buddy. We'll do it again soon.
Thanks for having me.
It's Jim Rutledge. All right. That's a question that's hard to answer, man. I'd probably say Christian Watson might still be my answer. but he just needs to stay healthy. That's the hard part. Hunter, if I asked you that question, how would you answer it?
Part of me wants to go Dobbs just because of his skill set is just so much more. He can beat you multiple ways. Like Christian Watson, unless he's beating you deep or just outrunning you, I haven't seen him do anything of just I'm gonna win against a physical corner without needing my speed to do it. And that's where Romeo Dobbs just does so many things so well. He's like a 5-tool wide receiver.
He is, yeah, and he's really reliable, Dobbs is. For those of you, and I see several of you watching along with us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, or excuse me, not Twitter, but Facebook and YouTube, ESPN Milwaukee, ESPN Madison, go ahead, drop your comment. Who you think, if I asked you that question, right, if you're making a list of receivers you absolutely can't lose, who would be the first name you wrote down? I don't know. It's either Jayden Reed or Christian Watson in my head. I'm not ready to give up on Christian Watson yet, despite the health struggles in his first 2 seasons. I think when he is on the field, and you saw it against the Cowboys in that wild card game, when he's on the field, man, he opens some things up for that offense. So I think I'd probably still say Christian Watson, but curious, go ahead and drop your names, YouTube, Facebook, and wherever else. And if you're listening after the fact, go ahead and shoot me a tweet at Alex_Strouf, at _Hunter V, I believe is Hunter on Twitter, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So, We'll revisit that throughout the offseason, too, because I think as we get into training camp, some guys will prevail, some guys will pop, and we'll have more of an answer. So curious on your thoughts on that. All right, let's rapid fire to end the show. The big news, Mike Budenholzer, former Bucks coach and champion coach back in 2021, is finalizing a deal to become the head coach of the Phoenix Suns, which is fascinating, right? League comes at you fast, man. That's the team he beat. And the Suns now subscribing to the can't beat him, join him type theory that they're going to bring in Mike Budenholzer as the new head coach of the Phoenix Suns. I'm happy for Bud. I knew he'd land on his feet. I know he'd get another opportunity. And it's an interesting one because the Phoenix Suns are a team that has completely underdelivered the last several years. They've tried the Super Bowl. They've tried the super team aspect with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, and it just hasn't worked. They haven't been able to win playoff series the last couple of years. I'm fascinated to see what Mike Budenholzer is able to do down there, and I'm curious if he brings in Darvin Ham, the now fired Lakers head coach, who is his assistant in Milwaukee. I wonder if he kind of runs back what his staff look like in Milwaukee, or if he goes completely from scratch. So Mike Budenholzer headed to Phoenix, and big baby Glenn Davis headed to jail. Big baby Davis has been sentenced to 40 months in jail for fraud, insurance fraud. Big baby Davis went live on Instagram yesterday, or 2 days ago, whenever the sentencing was. Shortly after learning he would go to jail for over 3 years, he went on Instagram Live. And Hunter, you have not seen this yet, correct? You have not watched this video yet?
Correct. I didn't even know he was on Instagram, so this is all news to me.
You are allowed to keep our mics live when we play this clip because I want to hear your laughter. Here is Big Baby Davis on Instagram shortly after learning his fate that he will be in jail for 40 months.
That's the only way you can stop me from eating hamburgers is put me in jail. That's all I say. I'm gonna stop you eating hamburgers. I'm gonna put you in jail. You don't want to stop eating hamburgers and Cheetos? You're going to jail.
That's the man who just got sentenced to jail.
Same. The only way I'm gonna stop eating those. Love Cheetos, love burgers. He's a man of the people. Well,
so
maybe
good.
not though, since
no,
the jail
we probably
people.
shouldn't be praising him, but unbelievable.
It's so funny.
And shortly before he said that, he's like, I'm going to get so jacked. I'm going to get in great shape because I'm going to jail. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. All right, what's Strouf learning? We're going to give you a double whammy today. I do want to talk college football video game that's coming out because they dropped the cover of it today. So, Hunter, you can go ahead and pop that on. We'll start there. I think it's a cool cover. No Wisconsin representation, unless I'm missing it. Hunter, right? No Wisconsin representation?
I haven't been able to find it. I haven't been able to find it. A lot of SEC schools, and then they also dropped a image from the gameplay. So it'll be the top one here on the stream.
So I have not seen this yet.
Yeah, that is in-game footage of Notre Dame walking out of the tunnel on the top. It looks incredible.
Phenomenal. Yeah, it looks really good. Do we have a date for when this comes out? I have not played a video game in months, but I will play this.
I believe we're looking at mid to end of July is what they're expecting.
Okay,
That's
cool.
usually when it came out, and I'm already planning on. I told my wife I'm taking that Friday off. We're not making plans that whole weekend. I will be on the couch playing this because I got to start out as an OC at Fresno State, work my way up, and get going from there and get my dynasty with maybe the Badgers or somewhere else. But gosh, I'm so excited for this game.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I'm really excited for this one. The other thing I found out, and this was off the Austin Rivers comment on ESPN earlier this week, when he said you could take a bunch of NBA guys and put them in the NFL. You couldn't do that with the NFL
Terrible
and the NBA,
take.
which I thought was interesting. But not NBA level, but for the first time, an former NFL player has signed a professional basketball contract, and it is a former Green Bay Packer, a forgotten Green Bay Packer, but a former Green Bay Packer. Hunter, did you see the storyline?
No, I didn't.
Devin Funchess, who had a very short-lived tenure as a Green Bay Packer back in 2020, has signed a professional basketball contract. The Carolina Panthers made a cool release about it. Obviously, he spent most of his career in Carolina with the Panthers. He was he played college football at Michigan, tight end turned receiver, and now he has signed a professional basketball contract. I am not sure where, Australia, I believe. And Colombia, excuse me. Colombia is where he will play, but the training
Only
camp
missed
is in
it by a
Australia,
few
so-
thousand miles, but
Well,
you got
they're
there.
doing their training camp in Australia. So I have the article in front of me. That's why I said Australia, I believe, but I just skimmed it. So they're doing 3 weeks in Australia, and then they'll be playing professionally in Colombia. So shout out to Devin Funchess, a professional basketball player now. So there you go. Those are what I learned today. Great week on Mr. Irrelevant, man. A lot of fun. We talked to Cam Hunter on Wednesday, the new Badgers point guard. If you missed any of that conversation, make sure you go seek that one out. On Wednesday's edition of Mr. Irrelevant, on Monday, we had Ben Brust on to evaluate my first 2 weeks as the Kyle Brust and Nortman producer. He actually waved at me while I was talking to Jim Rutledge out in the 3rd Street Market Hall here. So I don't know what the hell's going on, but I gotta go. I gotta go be a producer for that. We're with you in about 40 minutes, 2 to 5 on ESPN Wisconsin. If you missed any of the show, make sure you check it out. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Brought to you by our friends at Door County Distillery, and of course, full show available on YouTube as well. That'll do it for us today. We're back with you Monday beginning at 12:30 right here on the ESPN Madison, ESPN Milwaukee YouTube channels, ESPN Madison Facebook page, and of course available wherever you get your podcast. Have a fantastic weekend. I'm getting a fish fry tonight. I'm pretty fired up about that. It's Mr. Relevant. I'm Alex Strouf. Peace.